Everyone, welcome. This is Unit 10, Lesson 2, Volume of Prisms. So for your do now, you're considering this two-dimensional pattern here. If we were in class, I would have given you this, you would have cut it out, and you would have, experimented with this yourself. So if you were to fold this pattern, what three-dimensional shape would it create? Now maybe you could visualize it on your own. If not though, behold. So this is what you would have been given in class, okay? So that two-dimensional shape, right? It's made up of a bunch of squares. If you were to fold along the edges, so I'm gonna start folding along those edges. Okay, and then we have this fold here. So every edge is now folded. If you were to now enclose everything, what three-dimensional shape do you have? And what you should be answering is, I don't have tape, so work with me here. It's a cube, okay? So you have a six-faced figure, so you might know, like if you roll a die, it kind of looks like this. Okay, but you should be left with a cube. Okay, so again, that was a cube. Just like if you roll a die, maybe if you get a package in the mail and it comes in a box, that could also be cube shaped. So a cube is a type of a prism. A prism is a three-dimensional solid figure with two parallel faces called bases. So parallel, we know what they mean, they never intersect. A rectangular prism, those two bases that it's referring to is this rectangle here and this rectangle here. They are parallel to each other. The volume is going to be the amount of three-dimensional space an object occupies. And there's a lot of ways of thinking of it. One way of thinking of it is, if I refer back to this, is it's just a bunch of these squares that are going to be stacked on top of one another until you eventually reach a certain height, right? If I take that bottom square and I just take a bunch of those squares and I stack them on top of each other, it's going to look like this at the end. Here, you could also think of it as a bunch of cubes occupying this space. So just like we did the area do now yesterday, this is the volume version of that. Three-dimensional figures are going to have a length, a width, and a height. Here you can see 4 cubes long, right? So we have a length of 4 cubes. Here you can see a width of 2 cubes. Here you can see a height of 2 cubes. So if you take, and I'm going to make this now kind of two-dimensional and kind of refer back to that drawing. If there's 4 cubes going across the front and there's 4 cubes going across the back. Two-dimensional, if you were to look down on this object, this is what you would see. And right now you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cubes. Because the height is 2, you have this again stacked on top of that same thing. So you're going to have another set of 8 cubes. If there's 8 here and there's 8 here, that means there's 16 cubes in that picture. The types of prisms we're going to be looking at are those cubes and, just like that last picture, rectangular prisms. Instead of taking the time to count what it would look like visually, the formula you're going to use, and you've probably seen in the past, is length times width times height. So we're going to do these 3 together. Find the volume of the rectangular prism shown below. Step 1, write down your formula. Volume equals length times width times height. Substitute. Length, width, height. 6 times 8 times 15. 6 times 8 times, 15. Volume equals 720, and just like area was squared for two-dimensional figures, this is going to be cubed. So the units are yards, and you're going to say yards cubed. A rectangular prism with a square base is shown below. Find the volume of the prism. Now, square base just means the squares are those pieces that are parallel to each other. Those are those parallel faces. It doesn't mean it's a cube. It just means that those bases are squares. The volume of a rectangular prism, the formula, length times width times height. Length, width, height. Substitute 4 times 5 times 4. 4 times 5 times 4, 80. The units here are feet because it's volume cubed. The next one has no picture, so I'm going to encourage us to always draw a picture when we can. So the best way to draw that three-dimensional shape, okay, is to draw those two parallel faces first. I know it says cube, bear with me, I tried to make squares. So draw those two parallel faces by drawing two identical squares, moving one down a little bit. Then connect the corners. Top left, top right, bottom right. Okay, and that's a really good way to draw it. A cube has a side length of 8 inches. Find the volume. Well, the volume of a cube is also length times width times height. Just like a square, if you were only given that 8 and you knew the other sides, a cube, just like this, is just made up of a bunch of squares. So this square here, this would be 8, this would be 8, this would be 8. So when it all comes together, that's your length, width, and height. All the dimensions would have an 8. Volume equals 8 times 8 times 8. 8 times 8 times 8. 512. The units here is inches cubed. All right, guys, so that's what that video is going to cover. You have these 4 questions on this page, 2 additional ones, and a closure question. Any questions for me, guys, please contact me, okay? And I'll do my best to help you. Have a good day, everybody.